Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Fedra Tehrani, who's here to share with us becoming an energy shifter. So what if the key to transforming your life wasn't about changing what happened to you, but learning to shift your energy and bouncing back stronger than ever? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Fedra Tehrani is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the owner of Horizons Clinical Therapy, serving clients across San Francisco and all of California. Her practice empowers adults and adolescents with neurodivergent diagnoses as they navigate anxiety, depression, and trauma. With a therapeutic orientation rooted in psychodynamic internal family systems, somatic and solution-focused modalities, she also incorporates guided imagery and meditation. Fedra is dedicated to helping clients from diverse cultural backgrounds move beyond survival and into thriving. So welcome to the show, Fedra Tehrani.
Hi, how are you, Marianne?
I am doing well. I'm so delighted we're having this talk. And my goodness, you touch on some things that I think are so important for people right now. So, what does it mean to be an energy shifter?
Well, essentially, in life, you go through experiences of people coming into it and coworkers, personal, professional, and relationships that, some of us are families, they don't have a choice, but some we do have a choice of friends and coworkers, but everyone's, energy and experience of each other is a little different. And sometimes we get along and sometimes we don't. And depending on how we see the world or our values, we may not agree on things, but some people may take more of our energy than others, and we don't initially maybe recognize it, but maybe over time we become more cognizant of, that some people just take too much from us in the way just they perceive the world, or like I said, their values. And if you feel that there are people in your life that are doing that and they're sort of depleting you, and people talk about boundaries and setting them, and sometimes that helps, obviously, and it's feasible to do that, to put those boundaries down. And then there's other times where it may not be possible, like, a coworker that you're just have to work with, and you can't set boundaries and ignore them because they're essentially working with you. But you can learn to change the conversation or learn to not give them the time or the energy to further feed into something and not ignore the topic, but change the topic or not respond to the certain possible provocations from them. So if you continue to see them a certain way and recognize that that's how they do it and you keep feeding into it, then that's where you're going to go and that's where you're going to stay. But if you recognize that this is the dynamic and I don't want to keep going in that direction, it's possible to just not give it the attention and shift it and maybe in a nice way request to discuss it in a different way or shift it. You are now more in control than and you can maybe minimize it or not choose to respond to it. And slowly over time, you'll see that the topic is not as brought up, or maybe is brought up, and you can clarify that you don't feel like that's something you want to discuss anymore and you let go. So, what the way you look at something or how you focus on something is where your energy is goes and or is taken up. So you by word choices and asserting yourself in the right way, you can change it. You don't have to be a part of it, or you know, you don't have to feel like you have to fix something or keep feeding it. So if you stop doing it, then it'll slowly go out of your maybe experience with the person. That's if you already tried the boundaries and the boundaries didn't work. So
Well, and can you give us an example? Because I think a lot of times when people, like you're saying, we have someone we're working with and they're challenging. So, how do we shift our focus in a way that protects our energy?
maybe over time we become more cognizant of, that some people just take too much from us, in the way just they perceive the world, or like I said, their values. And if you feel that there are people in your life that are doing that and they're sort of depleting you, and people talk about boundaries and setting them, and sometimes that helps, obviously, and it's feasible to do that, to put those boundaries down. And then there's other times where it's may not be possible, like, a coworker that you're just have to work with, and you can't set boundaries and ignore them because they're essentially working with you. But you can learn to change the conversation, or learn to not give them the time or the energy to further feed into something, and not ignore the topic, but change the topic, or not respond to the certain possible provocations from them. So if you continue to see them a certain way and recognize that that's how they do it, and you keep feeding into it, then that's where you're going to go and that's where you're going to stay. But if you recognize that this is the dynamic, and I don't want to keep going in that direction, it's possible to just not give it the attention and shift it, and maybe in a nice way request to discuss it in a different way, or shift it. You are now more in control than and you can maybe minimize it or not choose to respond to it. And slowly over time, you'll see that the topic is not as brought up, or maybe is brought up, and you can clarify that you don't feel like that's something you want to discuss anymore, and you let go. And what the way you look at something or how you focus on something is where your energy is goes and or is taken up. So you, by word choices and asserting yourself in the right way, you can change it. You don't have to be a part of it, or, you know, you don't have to feel like you have to fix something, or keep feeding it. So if you stop doing it, then it'll slowly go out of your maybe experience with the person. That's if you already tried the boundaries and the boundaries didn't work. So
Well, and can you give us an example? Because I think a lot of times when people, like you're saying, we have someone we're working with and they're challenging. So, how do we shift our focus in a way that protects our energy?
then you keep your mind, and I always should prepare for maybe something worse happening, or trying to control the outcome by keep exploring worst case scenarios. But at the end of the day, you really don't know the outcome, and you're trying to prevent things that haven't even happened. So the best way to approach it is by saying, I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll see. Or let's just see how it goes, and I'll take it as it comes. So let me just explore what's possible when it happens. And also, I don't know what's available to me. And I think actually, I don't know, it possibly could go better than that. What if it does go better? Start exploring, like, actually, if this happens, maybe it's for the better, and maybe it's for some good reason for me to learn something.
I love that. Well, one of the things that you share about, which I found very profound, is making right choices. So, how do we do that and stop repeating past patterns?
So that one's really difficult because when it's hard to find that moment where you awaken to, um I might keep bringing up my past into my life because I'm making the same choices with similar people. And it's once you start to notice the pattern, it's like it's repeating. That's you're still in the same mindset or the same kind of relationships that keeps taking from you versus giving to you, or maybe in a job that's not fulfilling and it's constantly putting you in a state of unhappiness or just maybe possibly boredom. So these, if you notice a pattern, then you recognize that I actually have to shift my choices. And even though it's harder, these decisions or these choices are going to make it harder, it actually is for the better because I'm breaking from that pattern. And it's, even though not as comfortable, it actually is going to maybe make me grow. Not only that, break a bigger pattern and not just my life, but I was bringing up like generational patterns and generational trauma where it's your family or your parents and your great grandparents. About this is another level of exploring, like, wait a minute, it's just me. And then if you recognize a pattern also in your parents that have done the same, then once you then changed and make those different choices, then you'll see a massive like change in how your life maybe starts to move towards easier and better outcome because you've made the hard decisions and you've overcome them with better choices.
That's such a big point. And you talked about something I want to dive into a little bit. You talked about families' generational past. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like for us?
Yeah. So, okay, for like an example is, you don't know, but maybe once you see that you're making the same pattern within relationships, the personal or most likely your intimate partners, you're picking the similar people, and but then you look back to your parents' relationship and your either mom or dad, their decisions and who they pick in their life, and was that healthy, was not healthy, and are you repeating similar patterns as they were, and maybe even your grandparents. So did they make the similar decisions and partners and intimate partners that was led to their kids and then now yours, um, relationships. So it's good to go backward a bit and do a little exploring of past family patterns because then there is a pattern. I would put money on it. Pretty
Hmm.
clear pattern, but sometimes it's hard to look at, and some parents don't like to share about their relationships or past. But once you see it, then it's hard to not do something about it.
Do most people need to work with someone like you to kind of identify these patterns? Because otherwise, it's kind of like my mom's always done it this way, my grandma's always done it this way. They don't really see it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very likely that um, some people are able to get there, and it's the level of introspection and to push for change. It's not as easy, so it can be done alone, but it's much easier if you are working with someone who can possibly see and support you in like recognizing and reminding you of, hey, this is what we brought up before and it keeps coming up, and it's helpful to have, someone support you in this process, in this journey. And sometimes the patterns are so severe or heavy that some people, awaken to it and they have no choice but to make different decisions. Everyone's different, and I guess hard to say, but it would be helpful to have someone to remind you and bring you out of it and move towards a better pattern.
And you often hear you can't see the forest from the trees because we're so in it.
In it, yeah.
Yeah, to notice a family pattern, a lot of times it takes somebody to go, "Hey, that's a pattern." You're like, oh my gosh, it is."
Yes, yes, and exactly. To build that introspection to see outside or see the pattern, it's a lot of work. And like I said, depends on each person. Some I've seen some do on their own, and I've seen a lot of people in my practice that we've worked through that ourselves together. So
Well, I know another topic that you share about, which I found fascinating, is the topic of alchemist. And what you've said is, and I've got this, it's not what happens to you, rather, it's what you do with what is coming at you. Can you share on that for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, this also comes from how many times you had things coming at you, how much experience you had in life to go through some hardships. Some of us had less hardships than others. If you had more hardships early on in life, I think you start to learn this a bit easier because you see, like, oh, this is something I'm now acutely aware of, that life does throw some curveballs and at least expected sometimes. But the first few times that maybe, depending on what the incidents are, um, you're learning something, right? You're learning about how did it how did it go? How did it turn out? And then how do I feel now after? And then that experience, past experiences, then gives you a reflection point of, whoa, okay, actually, I'm more skilled now because of the experiences. But if you didn't have those experiences and you do get them from time to time in life, it's the way you approach it and learning to just go with it and learn to pick up new skills as you're going along. And obviously the sometimes very difficult experiences in life, can the hardships that are definitely, they mold you, and it can mold you in a good way, or it can mold you not in such a good way. And if the difference between that would be is how you choose to see it, how you choose to see what is coming from it, and what you're learning as a consequence of it. So you could stay in that mindset of that things don't work out for me, and I'm always having something happen, and I have to deal with it. Or you could say, I'm learning so much and I'm growing, and I can't. I this is too much sometimes, but I had support. I learned to rely on some people, and I learned to maybe explore how the incident was, and I'm not letting it go in the same way anymore.
I think that's a very profound piece. If we keep thinking the worst case scenario, will we keep getting that?
Well, there's a mindset about, there's many people out there that are starting to recognize that we could be setting ourselves up for the worst case scenarios, and how long we stay in that negative mindset instead of coming out of it, can keep us again in that same mindset. So yeah, I do think that if we start to explore the potential positive outcomes and look at the bright side sometimes, even though it's really hard. Maybe initially it's not easy to see, but later on you can. Once you recognize the positive outcomes out of the negative situation, then you can actually start formalize that belief system that if I do look for the better and I start exploring for best case scenarios, it's possible that I'm now projecting a better outcome for myself, and um, not focus so much on what ifs. So this also goes to that, your attention and your focus, where it goes. So if you're focusing on what ifs and I don't know, and you're going in that direction, then it could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's good enough to prepare and plan for possible situations, but it's not good to keep, like, go further into it and project potentially negative outcomes.
That is so empowering. So people know to start shifting their perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And I've noticed this in my own experience that it has definitely worked for me, and it has worked for majority of my clients, to start actually evaluating, why do I keep staying in this mindset, and where does it take me, and how does that affect me in my life. And then again, look at your parents too. Were they the same way? Were they always looking at worst case scenarios? And how did that turn out for them? Or what was it experience for them?
So I know that you also talk about learning to problem solve with information and support. What does that mean?
So it really means to check for your resources, check for your what's at hand in front of you, and like explore what is it that you need or you have versus maybe you need to go out. And some people are very self-reliant and they're used to just taking on the difficulties in their life alone. So support means to break the barrier and say, well, do I really have to? And maybe if I were to explore another way, would it be helpful to rely more on other people and friends and family a little bit and not carry everything on your own back, right? And what are the resources? And so that whole self-sufficient mentality that some of us built over our childhood, it keeps us from actually maybe doing things better or faster or overcoming things easier because we're just closed to some extent. And because sometimes it's just trusting that. And if you're not as trusting and you have a hard time relying, then choose to rely on the things that you maybe are okay with letting go if it doesn't work out. Choose your cards of some things that you want to do yourself, but don't try to open up to letting others also be there for you. And also look at the information that's in your current situation and just take a day at a time, uh, you know, and look at what you have, being more present. So that way you can make better decisions with what you have.
So, what if we're around people, and how do we understand this better? If we're around people who are really high anxiety folks or overreacting, what does that tell us about them and us?
Well, that's just the way they were raised. And if you, depending on how much you know about them, personally or professionally, that would help to just navigate how much you personalize something or you recognize it's theirs, not yours. So you don't take on their suitcase. You let them, go through it, but they may try to bring you in it, and you just need to learn the boundaries to not feed it and not get into it. This is where navigating and assertive skills of not discussing it or bringing up the things that you rather discuss or saying, oh, maybe you might want to talk to someone about this, or having them say, I don't know, but this seems like something that maybe you want to work on, but it's I don't really think it's my place to say. So there's a way to nicely address it with them without, but you have to catch it and you have to be able to know that it's not yours and it's theirs and be able to then reframe it or change the topic or shift the, focus to let them know that this is maybe someone else you could talk to about it. And instead of, I'm not the person to discuss that. It's very skill that is very difficult to do, especially depending on the relationship you're with or how intertwined your life is with them. But if once you catch it and you recognize it, you can also ignore the times that maybe they're that way around certain time of the year. The work projects come up. You could catch their patterns, and so then you slowly back off from that specific time or the specific days or per projects, or then you let them know that there's other places to maybe support them in that instead of talking to you about it.
So basically, the folks that we're with that are going through their own difficulties, they're not intentionally keeping us down. It's just their mindset.
Yeah, and that's hard to accept or realize sometimes because they do, it's almost like it makes you feel bad, but they're just projecting their own things onto you. And if you take it on and feel like it's about, and so they can say things to you that make you feel really bad, and that's then actually real. If you can say like, wait a minute, how much of this is about me and what is it, is this actually related to how I feel? Is it them? What's going on in their life? And what's going on in their current situation with work? What other things that's happening? And it's to some extent could be something about you, but it's a lot of times also a lot to do with them as well. And so just if you see the pattern that is happening over and over, then that's when you know 100% that this is just their way of coping with the situation. Maybe they're under current stress of some sort, family life, I don't know. But if you don't start to recognize it's not about me anymore, then that's perfect spot where you can then say, it's okay that they're going through that, but I don't have to be the one who bites into it. And that's the hard part, is learning that don't bite, don't get don't go into the provocation and back off or not respond or say something to push it in a different direction, or redirect them to somebody who can help them.
Oh my goodness, that's such wise advice, because how often do we kind of get into the little bites? So like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to come back with this when that's their stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like I said, it's hard initially, but the key is to be aware of yourself. Like there's a defense mechanism called personalizing, and we do a lot. And so we think that whatever's happening in our lives, people around us, is really what we're doing. And maybe it is a combination of you and the other person. But if then, if it's starting to be a pattern where it's around a certain subject matter and it keeps coming up, then just explore a little bit more. It's like, okay, am I not providing enough for this person? And you can actually clarify and say, like, hey, where do you feel like I'm falling short with this? Like, do you feel like there's something we would want or change? And if they really can't clearly define it or tell you, then that is 100%, they're at that point, showing you that it's not about you. But you may some people are unfortunately unable to have that introspection to actually tell you. So it depends on where they're at. They might still continue to blame you, and they don't take ownership for their own stuff, and that's going to be an ongoing thing. So it just depends on, like, if you navigate the person and see if they have the insight with other aspects in their life that they've changed, or they're the same with everyone and they blame other people all the time. That's something that they're not going to be able to see. So that person is not going to be able to recognize that. So you have to start to see the person and where they're at.
It really takes us really stepping back and looking at that, and it has me kind of thinking for those folks that, I mean, we're happy and we're relaxed and enjoying life and feeling carefree, but then we get guilted into feeling like, oh, well, you're lazy. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So then you kind of see, like, well, what's their perception of what that is, the lazy, the word, or what's their perception of like productivity? What's their perception of like their, what they value and what they recognize as an importance in their life? And it could be completely different or maybe a little bit similar to yours. So it's just a matter of recognizing their viewpoints and their values. And once that does, you can have different values. So, and that easily triggers people because it's just like you happen to be in the same environment, but raised differently. And so you can let them feel angry with you and not take it personally. You can, they're going to be frustrated. But again, it's okay because, like I said, they just don't know, or they don't feel the same way. And you might want to just, shift the subject or keep a distance or bring up, like, hey, I don't think we see things the same way. Maybe, I agree that, this is frustrating, but I don't think that that's important. And make an agree to disagree on it. It's okay.
So interesting how perspective changes everything. Should we surround ourselves then with more positive, supportive people?
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. It is not easy because there's plenty of different people and different parts of your life that, but yeah, the key is to look a little bit more and see if you can navigate more people that are also looking at life differently and showing that they're at a different stage of their process of like what they value and different priorities in their life. Not always, easy or doable. I mean, especially if there's family members that are there in your life. So yeah, the case is to go towards it, but don't take it personally when you have people that are not there, and don't don't let it take from you. Just know that they're in their own process and different stages of it, and like move slowly away. Also help support them, but then not too much to the point where you're taking on responsibility.
Really kind of pay attention, because if we're working on ourselves to be better people and shift our energy, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone around us is doing the same.
Yeah, or they're in the same times of their process of understanding that, or self work, I guess.
So, why don't you share with us, Fredra, what type of work that you do? Because I know you help so many people. Why don't you share with us some of the work that you do with folks?
So majority of my work is I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work from a psychodynamic perspective, but I also do cognitive behavioral therapy and some family systems work and guided meditation. But my clients coming in are, dealing with stages of change, making decisions, difficulty addressing, conflicted relationships, and a lot of building on their assertiveness and all these topics that I just brought up. Basically, it comes up in their life. So initially, I'm in psychology, and I'm working with people in their relationships, and trying to heal and trying to find a better way to cope with different situations that are hard. But as of late, I'm starting to also be more focused on like ooh, how much time I take with them working through the past and processing it, and then moving towards shifting towards changing the mindset and understanding, while psychology is a helpful in many ways to break patterns, but also as a combination of that and understanding how long do people stay in the same mindset, and bringing them out of that and moving towards more positive outlook, and or finding that area where they can break from staying in the past and old patterns and coming towards the new, and learning to look more towards a positive mindset.
Well, and I understand you work with people in California. Now, do you work with people remotely?
Yes, I do. Yes, I work with people remotely, and I do a combination of in person and online in California as well.
Well, Fedra, where can people go to learn more about your work and to be part of your community? Of course, to book an appointment.
So I am online on my website. I have my own practice in California. I'm in Bay Area. So people can find me through either my websites, which is horizonsempowerment.com, if or just my name. If you just put it in the Google, you find the Psychology Today. That's another way of finding me through main contact. Um, and yeah, so there's, I think those are the best ways to find me, but they're always more than welcome to reach out to me through. I think those are there's other ones online, but all my information is the same across the board, different sites.
Well, Fedra, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Yeah, well, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. And I'm glad was able to discuss some of these topics with you.
Well, thank you, Fedra. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about becoming an energy shifter. To make an appointment with Fedra, please visit her website, horizonsempowerment.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.